Today's topic is cameras, film cameras. Not just any film cameras, point and shoot film cameras like this. These are plastic, but you know what's amazing about them? They have everything in there. You have a built-in flash, you have autofocus, you have auto exposure, and you have motors in there that will advance the film every time you click the picture, and they'll rewind it when you're all done. I got a Canon here. This one here is Pentax. Here's an Ansco. So I have a variety of them. And you know what? I'm going to tell you a little bit about the origin of the point and shoot cameras. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the advantages of point and shoot cameras and the disadvantages of point and shoot cameras. So let's talk about cameras. All right, it all started in 1979 when Konica introduced the first mass production autofocus camera, and that camera was the C35AF. It had autofocus, and the autofocus was developed by an American company, Honeywell. A lot of the Japanese camera companies were working with Honeywell to introduce a camera using their autofocus system, but Konica was the first one to bring one out to the market, and it was a hit because now you had a little camera you could put in your pocket or a bag and you'd be out there to do all that amazing stuff. So that was a big advantage. After that Konica one came out, all the other companies were starting to introduce things. Canon came out with a new and better autofocus. It was infrared based, so that was an advancement. But all the companies had them. Nikon, Canon, Olympus, Pentax, they all had them. And then they wouldn't have just one model or two models. They had all kinds of models of them. And they proliferated with all kinds of features like a really long zoom, or they would have a close-up feature, or they would say, hey, our flash is stronger, or they would have underwater models, or for a while they had some with a very huge viewfinder, and that was aimed towards senior citizens. Another feature that I remember when it came out that was very exciting was it would date stamp on the negative the day and the time of the photo. So that was a pretty neat feature. They were relatively cheap. You know, some of them were $49 or $79. And so a family could go out and buy a nice camera like this, and they would be using it for, you know, the kids' sports activities and birthday parties and Christmas and New Year's parties and Valentine's Day and all of that stuff. So with that camera that could do everything, you didn't have to know a lot of stuff. Let me tell you something very interesting about point and shoot cameras. You know, they started in Japan, and in Japan, they don't call it a point and shoot, they call it a baka-chan. And baka is a slang word. It's, be careful if you use it, you could get yourself in trouble. But baka means like crazy or stupid. You know, a stupid person can use this camera and get all kinds of nice pictures because you know, you don't need to be able to do the math and figure out the f-stop and shutters and all of this ISOs and all that. You just pick it up, click, click, click. You point and you shoot. You know, when they first came out, I wasn't too excited because I had a nice system like this. I had a bunch of different lenses and I had filters and I had all kinds of amazing stuff. I didn't have an auto winder, but I wasn't that excited because I had a really nice camera. So this is the kind of camera setup I had in the 1980s. I had a few extra lenses, an SLR. The Vivitar 283 is the flash that I preferred. And you got a whole camera bag full of stuff. So instead of that, you just grab a little point and shoot and you're ready to go. Which one's heavier? What happened to me personally was when I became a father and I had 2 or 3 little kids running around, that SLR was not the best for shooting them. So all these kids running around doing all their fun stuff that kids do, a little camera like this was easy and I didn't have to set any settings. I just click, shoot, click, shoot, click, shoot. The flash would go off, the film would advance, autofocus, auto exposure, and it was great. The camera that I was using in those days was given to me by a good friend because he upgraded. So he said, hey, you want my old camera? And I used it for years. I don't know where it is. I was thinking about it the other day. I think after a while it broke down and I put it in a drawer and I don't know what happened to it next. So that's a disadvantage. These guys are made out of plastic and you'll drop them and they break, and they just wear out. You know, plastic wears out. This one here, Ansco, this is a really cheap model. I picked it up at a yard sale. It's kind of neat with this feature. Olympus is the one that came out with that amazing feature in the beginning, and then other companies copied them. But Olympus had the clamshell one, and that was the lens cap, but also that's how you turned it off and on. And other companies copied them, you can see. I did reluctantly enter into the point and shoot. You know, I kind of like having this, but it's not my favorite camera. It's not a camera that I show off or I'm like, hey, look what I got around my neck. But anyhow, that's a little bit about point and shoots. So the advantage is you got everything right there. You got your flash, autofocus, auto exposure, auto winder, and other features on there. The disadvantage is they're cheap, they're plastic, they're not made to last. This one here takes AA batteries, which is pretty neat because they're very easy to get at. Now this other one, this Pentax, that's not AA. These are an Energizer, it's a 123 battery. And the reason they switched over to these are much stronger because those little point and shoot cameras, they got a lot of stuff going on with all those motors in there and with the flash going off. So they switched over to a more robust battery that could do more and last longer than a AA. But then that's a downfall of these can be hard to find. You know, right now what's happening with film is there are young people getting into it and they're like, hey, I can get into this film photography for very cheap. And they're discovering these point and shoot cameras. And, you know, you go to a place like Goodwill or Salvation Army, places like that. Sometimes you can find these for $1 or $5. So you can find them on eBay, $15, $20. There are some high-end ones. Contax has one that's very desirable. I think some of the Olympus models are right now very desirable. But there's lots of them out there, and as people converted to digital, they just flung them like, no, let's give it to Goodwill. I don't want it anymore. It's just cluttering up the house. I was kind of excited when I picked up this little Pentax camera, and then when I got home and put some film in it and clicked it, I got an error that said E9. I don't know what that is, but wah, wah, no good. Anyhow, we talked about the point and shoot cameras today, the history of them, the advantages of them, the disadvantage of them. So thanks a lot for watching my video. In the future, I'm going to have more videos. Thank you very much. There it is. So this one uses AA batteries. And nope. All right.